It all started with what I thought was the dream home. Peaceful, private, tucked beside a pristine lake shimmering under golden sunsets. But what I didn't know was that my new, peaceful neighborhood came with one of the most controlling shows you could imagine and their queen, a woman who decided my lake wasn't mine anymore. What happened next turned into a legal showdown that shook the entire community and exposed everything they'd been hiding before I dropped the hammer in court. Before we dive into this insane HOA story, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because you won't believe how this power-hungry HOA tried to take everything, and how it all came crashing down on them in the end. It began when I moved into a secluded property on the outskirts of an HOA-controlled neighborhood. The listing made it clear. My parcel was outside HOA jurisdiction. My land included a private lake, about 3 acres of water bordered by my forest line. The lake had belonged to the property for generations, long before the HOA was even formed. I spent my days restoring the boathouse, cleaning the docks, and installing a small solar system for lights. Then came Karen, the HOA president. At first, she showed up with a welcome basket, but her real mission was obvious. She wanted to review my boundaries and ensure compliance with HOA standards. I explained politely that my property wasn't part of her HOA, but she didn't take it well. Soon, letters began showing up. Claims about shared easement rights, community access, and even environmental concerns. The HOA started harassing me with citations I didn't owe and notices demanding annual lake maintenance fees. When I ignored them, things escalated. They trespassed to post warning signs on my dock, private use subject to HOA review. I tore them down, installed cameras, and called my attorney. He confirmed what I already knew. They had no jurisdiction. But the HOA wasn't backing off. They began spreading rumors that my lake was community property because of an old subdivision map. What they didn't expect was that I'd already dug into the county archives. The deed clearly defined the lake as part of my lot, fully private, no easement. Still, the harassment grew. Anonymous complaints to the county, fake environmental violations, and even threats of legal action. My attorney advised patience. Let them hang themselves, he said. And they did. They filed a lawsuit, claiming partial ownership of my lake. They cited implied community benefit and historic access. But their evidence was laughable, a faded map that didn't even align with GPS coordinates. My lawyer prepared the counterattack: trespassing, harassment, slander of title, and malicious prosecution. We filed a countersuit. As court dates loomed, Karen doubled down. She rallied HOA members, convincing them that the lake belonged to everyone. They hosted meetings, posted angry rants online, and even showed up near my fence line with signs. It was no longer just about property, it was personal. Chapter 2 began with discovery. Our legal team requested every HOA record referencing my property. What we found was explosive. Karen had manipulated meeting notes, falsified votes, and even paid a consultant to forge environmental claims. When my attorney confronted their counsel, they tried to backpedal, suggesting a settlement to share the lake. We refused. Then the county got involved. Turns out the HOA had been dumping lawn chemicals into storm drains leading to my lake. The irony was stunning. They'd polluted the very thing they claimed to protect. The environmental inspector sided with me. Meanwhile, my lawyer prepared a full evidentiary brief: photos, satellite data, and historical plats. The court date arrived, and the HOA came armed with bluster and binders of irrelevant paperwork. Karen sat smugly in her bright red suit, glaring across the room. But as the evidence rolled out, her confidence crumbled. The judge listened intently as we demonstrated how the HOA's lake access map was a fabrication layered over outdated survey lines. The real property boundaries were irrefutable. Then came the bombshell, the forged consultant report. My attorney called in the real environmental office. They confirmed the report was fake, complete with a signature of someone who hadn't worked there in years. The courtroom went silent. The judge recessed for the day, clearly furious. Outside, Karen looked shaken but still defiant. She muttered something about appeals and protecting the community. but her members were beginning to turn on her. They'd trusted her leadership. Now they saw she'd dragged them into a legal disaster. Chapter 3 opened with the fallout. The court not only dismissed their claim, but granted my countersuit full consideration. The HOA was ordered to pay damages for harassment, attorney's fees, and defamation. Karen was removed as president by a unanimous member vote. But that wasn't the end. The county launched an investigation into HOA finances. It turned out Karen had used association funds to pay her personal legal bills. Embezzlement charges followed. The new HOA board reached out to me privately, begging for peace. They offered a written apology, a public correction, and full coverage of restoration costs for the lake. I agreed, on one condition: they would permanently amend their bylaws to exclude any jurisdictional claims over non-member properties. They did. Over the next months, my property returned to its tranquil state. I rebuilt the dock, restocked the fish, and added a small sign by the shore. Private property, respect boundaries. But every time I saw the ripples on the water, I thought of how close I'd come to losing it all to a power-hungry HOA. It wasn't about the lake. It was about control, ego, and the false sense of authority that comes when someone thinks rules apply to everyone but them. Karen's downfall became local legend. Her name turned into shorthand for HOA overreach. Residents whispered stories of her fiery courtroom meltdown, her desperate attempts to spin the narrative, and her eventual resignation from the neighborhood altogether. I later heard she'd moved to another HOA community, ironically as just a tenant this time, no power, no control. And as peace settled over the lake, I realized the most valuable thing I'd won wasn't money or property. It was proof that even against a corrupt system, truth still matters. But there was one final twist. Months later, I received a letter, anonymous, postmarked from another county. Inside was a photocopy of an HOA board memo from 2 years prior, outlining a plan called Lake Access Initiative. It wasn't just Karen's idea. It was a coordinated plan by several HOA presidents in the region to expand their influence through annexation proposals. My attorney and I forwarded it to the state's Homeowner Association Regulatory Board. Investigations began quietly. The ripple effect was huge. Several HOAs were audited, bylaws rewritten, and leadership replaced. What began as one woman's obsession with my lake became the catalyst for a regional cleanup of HOA corruption. In the end, justice wasn't just served, it echoed. And every evening as I watched the sun dip below the lake's edge, I smiled, knowing that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's peace earned through perseverance and truth. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this wild HOA showdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and drop a comment about what you'd do if your HOA tried something like this. Stay tuned for more real-life property dramas, and I'll see you in the next story.